Hello friends, this is Kostub and today we continue our discussion on Economic Survey 2019-20. Here in this session we'll be discussing the volume 2 chapter 1. This chapter is titled State of the Economy. Now as the title is self-explanatory, it takes a bird's eye view of the entire Indian economy. This is the evaluation of Indian economy which was done in pre-COVID scenario. So it doesn't take into consideration the impact that coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown is having on the Indian economy. It starts with giving a picture which is not very optimistic about the growth, economic growth of world economy as well as Indian economy. And this chapter clearly tells you that even during pre-COVID scenario 2019, if you say, the growth of world economy was very sluggish. So after 2008, this is the slowest year 2019. And from the point of view of Indian economy also, it takes the same view that the growth of Indian economy is subdued. It is less than expected. So we'll see what it says. Now, here the preface, right, state of the economy, the first page. Here it is very clear that the performance of Indian economy that is mentioned here, you don't have to get into it too much because all these numbers are pre-COVID and they're bound to change in the months to come. Here two things they have mentioned that which are significant if you have to evaluate or predict the Indian economy. They say protectionist tendencies of US China and rising US Iran geopolitical tensions. So understand one thing, that before the coronavirus pandemic there were two major threats to world economy also, and because Indian economy is intrinsically linked to the world economy, the threats were one, the US China trade war, and second, I mean, that is in the context of protectionism, and second is the geopolitics in West Asia. So all these contexts, both these contexts have changed. Now these may resurface when the lockdown ends, but presently the major threat to economic growth, not only globally but nationally also, is the COVID pandemic and the consequent lockdown. Clear? Second paragraph here mentions certain steps that have been taken by the Indian government, and then the chapter tries to convince you that the future is bright. Now, what are the steps mentioned here? One is significant easing of monetary policy. So RBI has been reducing rates. Second is the insolvency resolution process. So IBC, that is a very good step taken, which in due course of time will improve the ease of doing business in India. Next is easing of credit. So they are saying that the NPA problem has been taken care of up to much extent, and the credit availability in the Indian economy is also increasing. The next step is very important. You can get a question in prelims also and mains also. It is called National Infrastructure Pipeline. So this is a targeted program where government for the next 5 years is targeting huge investment, 1 lakh crore plus for in infrastructure. So this is the basis on which this chapter tries to convince you that the future of Indian economy is bright. But then again, as you can very well understand, that one thing is missing here. It is the lockdown, pandemic and the lockdown. So we have to, when we read this chapter and try to understand get the picture, we have to understand in the context of this lockdown also. We have to have that perspective in our analysis. Here one thing is clearly mentioned: the deceleration of GDP growth can be understood within a framework of slowing cycle of growth. So understand one thing: no government is going to accept that their policies have led to slowdown in Indian economy. So this slowdown, this chapter says, is because of the business cycle. Globally, the economy is slowing down, and Indian economy, because it is tied to the global economy, is also the victim of this cycle of growth, slowing phase. So that is what the chapter tries to say. If you go to page number 2, here from prelims point of view, the World Economic Outlook, it is published by IMF. Then the numbers are given about the projections and predictions about India world economy by IMF. So all these are obsolete, will not be applicable post COVID scenario. So don't mug up all these numbers. Go to figure number 2. It says growth of individual BRICS countries. So these trends you need to follow, because every time when we look at Indian economy and its performance economically, growth, it has to be compared to the surrounding countries, the neighborhood, then the SARC, then BRICS, and then global. So here BRICS analysis is given, and you can see that India has been performing well as compared to the BRICS countries in terms of economic growth. Next, 1.2. So here India's GDP growth has correlates with the global world output. So that is what I was saying. The coupling of Indian economy with global economy is significantly highlighted in this chapter as a cause for the deceleration of growth in Indian economy. 1.3, here it is about inflation. Now this chapter is telling you that globally inflation is reducing, and in Indian economy also it says that inflation has not been a major problem. The reason here are twofold. One, slack in consumer demand. So inflation is either, we understand it, that demand pull or supply push. So we know that demand pull inflation in India is not a reason presently, because uh, overall, because of slowing economic growth, there is less demand in the market. So if there is less demand in the market, the inflation will not increase. And second is lower energy prices. You understand that when we speak about inflation in Indian context, the concept of core inflation is not applicable. That is applicable to advanced economies where food and fuel are not major causes of inflation. But when you analyze inflation in context of Indian economy, we know that the major causes are either food or fuel. So presently, economic survey says that overall demand in the economy is low. Plus, because of the crude prices decreasing, you know, the issue between OPEC, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, they were not ready to scale down their production. So there is a supply gut. And now, because of lockdown, no one's consuming petroleum. So the supply before COVID also was in surplus. That is why the prices of crude have gone down. So if prices of, there is no demand in the Indian economy and prices of crude are going down, overall inflation will reduce. So that is the context you have to understand, that slack in demand and energy prices going down have reduced inflation not only nationally but also globally. 1.4, they speak about the automobile industry. Now you understand that the barometer of economic growth of a country is automobile industry. If the economy is growing nicely, the first reflection is seen in the increasing demand for two wheelers and passenger cars, not only nationally, globally also, even in rural areas in India. So if you look at the growth of automobile industry, you can clearly understand the state of economy. You are very well aware that automobile industry in India has been facing tremendous problems in the recent couple of years. One reason is again slack in demand, especially in the rural area. Uh, Apart from this, there are two more reasons. One is technological, that we are shifting from BS to BS6. We are shifting from BS4 to BS6. So that is like a disruption caused in the automobile industry. And second is the shift and the promotion of electronic vehicles. So because of this electric vehicles and BS auto fuel norms change, automobile industry again is in a slow down phase. So here it is mentioned in 1.4, that is important for you. Next, page number 4. Here, uh, Indian economy in 2019-20, size of the economy. This is important for you. You can get a question on this. Fifth largest economy, GDP at current prices, and we have gone past UK and France in the past year. So the size of economy is estimated at nearly 3 trillion in 2019. Now, if you look at this diagram on page number 5, that India has a target to achieve a $5 trillion economy by 2025. This was a very good target. We are at $3 trillion and we want to go to $5 trillion. But the problem here is when you say 2025, this target of 5 trillion. Now this was a target in the pre-COVID scenario. Now after this prolonged lockdown, everyone agrees that not only nationally, globally also there will be a major slowdown in economy, right? So after this, I think we need to revise this target. So maybe you don't change the target, but you change the time scale. This target may be pushed ahead, not 2025, right? It seems very, very difficult to go to 2025 by 5 trillion economy by 2025. Next, page number 4 again, table 1. So top 10 economies in the world are given. Here you can see India is at the 5th position, and you can see that India has gone up, UK and France have gone down. So just go through the list. You can get a question in prelims on that. Next, you can shift to page number 6. Here in the top portion of the page, all the statistics are given. These statistics in post-COVID scenario will become irrelevant. That is why you don't have to read it. Table 3, real growth of GDP, if you see, Just go through the numbers. Don't recall or remember all of them. Just look at the trends. Next, 1.10. If you speak about this, this is about the stock market. So understand one thing, that the way we said that automobile industry is a barometer of performance of economy. Similarly, stock exchanges are also considered as reflective of the state of economy, whether India or outside. So if you look at the stock market in India, last year in 2019, March, after March, the stock exchange saw a major correction. So it went down drastically. And then it started increasing again to the extent that after December, so December to February 2019, it saw major increase. So there was positivity, a lot of positivity, optimism. And here in economics, one concept is important, that is called expectation. So these expectations, because these are reflected in stock exchanges. So if the stocks are rising, this shows that the people, the investors, the companies, the all the stakeholders in the economy are optimistic that the performance of the economy will go on increasing. That is why they buy. That is called the bull market. So they pull the stocks, they accumulate wealth. Now this movement of BSE post COVID will change. Recently also you must have seen, after March 2020, the stock exchanges have crashed like anything, right? More than even what they crashed in 2008 crisis. So here, whatever is given in the economic survey here, this becomes a bit obsolete in the context of post-COVID scenario. So this optimism reflected in stock exchanges presently can be seen as a wave of pessimism, where there is a lot of uncertainty and you're not aware when the economy will get back to its feet. That is why investors are selling stocks. So it's kind of a bear market now presently. Next, page number 7, inflation. Here we have discussed inflation in general, the causes. I'll just like to highlight that what is important from exam point of view, you need to study CPI, you need to study WPI, you need to study GDP deflator, you need to study PPI, and then comparing all these four is important from exam point of view. Also, you have to see page number 8, figure 10. It shows the divergence between CPI and WPI. In India, many a times it is seen that CPI and WPI, there is significant gap. This gap has certain reasons. Now that can be the basket of goods that is measured by each index. Second, it can be the weights assigned to the goods or services. And third, it can also be the inventory or the behavior of wholesalers who stock or hoard the products. So this inventory also causes this divergence between CPI and WPI. So this is figure number 10 that you need to study. Then 1.13, the concept of core inflation is important from prelims point of view. This is inflation which does not include food and fuel. This as a metric of inflation is majorly used in developed economies where food and fuel are not the major cause of inflation. But in countries like India, this concept is not directly very much applicable while measuring inflation or taking decisions at the level of RBI or government, because in our economies, core inflation is not the main problem. Our inflation is more related to food and fuel. That is why government or RBI also uses WPI as a headline inflation, and CPI also. Now, employment on page number 8, you can see the paragraph speaks about employment, formal versus informal. And then page number 9, you have this figure 11, which shows distribution of workers by all ages in usual status, right? Statuses of employment. Now here, what it says is, just in short, the survey says that it has been observed in the past couple of years, especially the last financial year, that the casualization of labor in the Indian economy is reducing. So employment in casual sector, informal sector is reducing, and employment in salaried jobs in formal sector, in formal sector are increasing. Also, it is said that self-employed people, the number is constricting. So these signs have been interpreted by this chapter as positive, that uh, agricultural labor from rural areas is shifting to cities, and this they are taking jobs in formal sector rather than working as casual laborers. Now this, I believe, again will change post COVID. Now after this lockdown, when the economy starts crawling again, what will happen? Majority of the people, have shifted from cities to their native places. Also, because of prolonged lockdown and the uncertainty associated, many small businesses would have closed down. In addition, even the large companies which can bear to stand up again after this lockdown would reduce or get lean in terms of their workforce. They'll only keep the labor that is absolutely necessary, and all the extra flab or fat will be shed. In this context, you have to see that I believe that I fear that this trend will reverse. You will see reverse migration from urban to rural area. uh, Jobs in formal sector may reduce, casualization of labor may increase, and self-employment, right? The way our prime minister had stated in the past, and that had generated a lot of controversy, that pakode bechne padenge. So that is something that may increase. That people have to find employment by themselves, and I believe this employment majorly would be related to agriculture and food sector, right? Because that is where the primary economy of rural areas is concentrated on. So this is about the labor scenario. Next, page number 9, it says that fiscal situation. So overall, when you speak about fiscal policy or fiscal situation, it is all about the government's earning and its expenditure. So when you speak about government revenue and government expenditure, what is the picture that this survey tries to present? Here, bird's eye view, not getting into the details. It says that the tax revenue of the government has not increased proportionate to the expectations or calculations of government earlier. This is because of two things. Overall, there is slowdown in economy, so tax revenue will reduce. And secondly, the implementation of GST is associated with certain concerns. There are certain criticisms, and the way it was implemented has left confusion, tax avoidance, and multiplicity. So because of this, GST has not given the kind of increase in revenue that government had calculated. So because of these reasons, it has seen that the overall tax revenue of government, though it is uh, optimistic, it's on a good track, because direct taxes are more than indirect taxes proportionately. 54% is direct contribution. So though the signs are good, the amount of increase has not been up to the mark. But on the other side of the fiscal situation, if you say expenditure by government, this expenditure is rising. And unfortunately, when you speak about government expenditure, this can be on two sides. It can be capital expenditure, which can be productive infrastructure, or it can be revenue expenditure, which is consumption, majorly subsidies, defense, interest payments, salaries, and all. It has been seen that in Indian economy, not only at the level of center but also at the level of states, that productive uh, capital expenditure has seen contraction, right? And the expenditure in revenue, consumption expenditure, has been rising. This increase is more at the level of states as compared to center. So overall, the bottom line is about fiscal consolidation. According to the FRBM Act, we were supposed to bring the fiscal deficit to the level of 3% and revenue deficit to the level of 0%. Presently, if you see the scenario, the fiscal deficit is around 3.3, which is more than the mandated target, and revenue deficit is 2.2%, which is much higher than zero. So overall, the fiscal situation of the government, even pre-COVID scenario, was not very good. Now, if you look at this and then try to see this in the context of post-COVID scenario and the lockdown, when the economy is again crawling back to normal, what will happen? The government's expenditure is going to rise, especially on subsidies, food subsidies, because it has to support the agricultural sector. A lot of people who have gone, the migrants who have gone back to rural areas, and the food security issue. So the subsidies of government may rise. On the other hand, after lockdown, again, as we have discussed, the tax revenue of the government, GST, I mean direct taxes as in indirect taxes, both may see a significant contraction. So in the next financial year, after the lockdown is over, you can see that the fiscal deficit of the government will worsen. Even the revenue deficit may not be controlled as mandated by FRBM. So the fiscal situation of the country may be very, very serious in the next 1 year. This can only be solved if government is able to borrow money from outside at a cheaper rate for a long term, right? And second, if we get significant investments as FDI from outside, we are able to attract the FDI from outside in short term in the next fiscal year. And the third factor can be if uh, the you are aware that in this coronavirus scenario, and even before that, there was a very negative attitude of the entire world towards China. It was emerging, and now this after COVID, it has significantly consolidated. So many businesses are looking forward to move away from China, and if that occurs, and if India is able to cash on it, right, this anti-China sentiment, India may be able to attract many businesses and investments which are moving out of China. So all these may be something positive that may occur in the post-COVID scenario. But nevertheless, having said all this, the fiscal situation of the government may see very serious concerns in the next 1 year. Next, page number 10, you can see here figure number 12, gross the fiscal deficit, and overall it can be seen that the forecast here of deficits that is given. You can just go through that. Next, page number 10 speaks about the monetary policy. If you speak about monetary policy, here the terms that are important are open market operations, because you get questions on that in prelims, the liquidity adjustment facility, monetary policy committee, then MCLR. So all these are the keywords that are important from exam point of view. Overall, uh, just to sum up, monetary policy here, it clearly says that the credit situation in the country is improving. The monetary policy you have to see in the context of the problem of NPAs. So there was a very negative sentiment in the economy because of the rising defaults and NPAs, and credit availability was problematic. But in the last one financial year, because of various steps taken by government as well as RBI, the credit situation in the economy has been improving. However, again, now after this COVID lockdown, you will see that many businesses will go in loss. The loans that were taken would not be, see, already RBI has brought a notification that EMIs have to be postponed. So in this scenario, you may assume that defaults may rise. Banks may not be very, very eager to give loans to people. So overall, and because of slowdown in businesses, loss of jobs, people will also would not want to spend on non-essential commodities. So overall, post COVID, the demand in the economy may go down, jobs may go down, expansion of businesses may go down. So overall, not only consumers but also businesses would not want to borrow or take loan. The loans that were already taken may turn into bad loans, and there may be defaults. So overall, the banking sector may come under tremendous stress after this COVID scenario. So the credit situation in the economy may worsen. RBI has only one option from the point of view of monetary policy, to reduce the repo rates, the rates. If RBI reduces rates and those rates are so in the post-COVID scenario, RBI may reduce the rates, and if these reduced rates are then passed on by the banks to the consumers, slowly and steadily the credit situation may improve. Again, I would highlight that here the role played by FDI, for the foreign businesses coming to India, and then external borrowing, that may help to bring the economy back. Coupled with it, there has to be Keynesian uh, macroeconomic policy to be followed by government, where counter-cyclically government will invest a lot of public funds into infrastructure and try to boost the demand in the economy. Now, page number 11, you can see credit growth, the same thing that we were discussing, NPAs, and then figure 14, growth of non-food bank credit. Here, whatever we have discussed, that is clearly mentioned here. Also, there has been one concern when you speak about the banking sector in India. 90% of the bank frauds and all the wrong things, NPAs, that have occurred in the last couple of years, they have been majorly in public sector banks. And if you see the banking sector in India, the majority of the banking sector is dominated by public sector banks. Now, that is the concern. One sign, 1.25, it is mentioned that the investment of banks into government securities is rising. Now, just try to imagine this, that banks, their primary function is to give loans and to earn from the interest. But if banks are not giving interest and they are deciding to put their money into government securities, that clearly is an indication of the pessimism that is present in the banking sector in the economy. So that is like banks are risk averse. They are not ready to loan because they fear that these loans may turn into defaults and bad loans in future. So 1.26 public sector banks. Here, table 4, you can see the net scheduled commercial bank credit. Here it is very clear that everything is going down and investment in government securities only is rising, which is a negative sign. Figure 15, growth in credit in public and private sector banks. If you compare this, you can see that public sector banks, the growth in credit is reducing. It is 5.2, 5.3%, which is pathetic. And if you compare with private sector banks, they are doing well, 25%. So the gap between growth in credit between public and private is clear indication of the risk averse nature and the governance issues and inefficiency associated with public sector banks. Here, I would point out that you should go through the PJ Nayak committee report that was on governance in banking sector. Page number 13, here growth of mercantile exports and imports. So it speaks about the external sector performance. So if you speak about external sector performance, just a bird's eye view, imports have been decreasing, exports have also declined. So imports are declining more than exports. So overall, if you look at the numbers, the current account deficit is reducing. So this seems like positive, right? I again repeat, both are decreasing, imports and exports, but imports are decreasing more than exports. So overall, the current account situation in the country, the current account deficit is reducing, which can be considered as a positive sign, but only in short term. Why? Because this scenario of reducing imports is complicated, because imports are not just of finished goods. If you consider the imports of raw materials and the imports of intermediate goods, which may get value addition in our economy and then again may be exported by India, then you understand the problem that reducing imports in long term may have a very negative impact on businesses, employment generation and exports of India in long term. Clear? So here, that is the point that I want to make out here. Next, page number 14, you can see growth of service exports and imports, current account deficit as a percentage of GDP. Just go through the trends. Here the keywords for you are current account deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit. You just have to prepare that because questions in prelims do come on these terms. 1.31, it speaks about FDI. Now here also, whatever is given in this chapter is pre-COVID. The chapter here is very, very optimistic about the increasing FDI flows that were visible till January to November, December, January, very recently. But then post-COVID, in March especially, if you see and if you observe the economy of India, the crash in stock market, it is very clear that FDI as well as the foreign investment as well as the FIIs, they have left the Indian economy in huge amount. So the foreign flows as of now are low or in negative. But again, as I said, I'll repeat again that post-COVID, if we are able to bring reforms and take appropriate steps, for example, ease of doing business, in the next 1 year, we can rise faster than China because the businesses and FDI, we can attract them as compared to the other economies in the region. Page number 15, table 5, sectoral shares in GVA. So here also, if you see agriculture, industry and services, one term here I would like to highlight, that is called Levisian transformation. It is like every economy moves from first primary sector to majority being manufacturing, there is secondary sector, then tertiary sector and then quaternary. So like US, China, they are moving towards even beyond services. So quaternary and quinary sectors, R&D and high-end research and development. India in this context is a problematic situation, because we have moved directly from primary to services. Manufacturing has not been developed. According to the past economic surveys, 2016 I think, they had clearly proved by their research that India has started deindustrializing before industrializing properly. So if you consider from that context, that picture is clearly given here. See, agriculture is 16%, industry is 29%, and services is 54% of GDP. But if you look at the employment, majority of the employment is in agriculture, some of it is in industry, and very less employment comparatively is in services. So I believe that in post-COVID scenario, when all the people have moved towards their native places, this is an opportunity for the government to again modernize the agricultural sector, boost the manufacturing sector, and make services more broad-based in terms of employment. For example, tourism and even businesses, banking, financial, insurance, this can be improved, not just focusing on IT. So this is about Levisian transformation. Page number 16, if you move, this speaks about manufacturing and the service sector that we have discussed. Uh, Page number 17, table 7. Look at the services gross value added, right? So everything seems negative here, right? So presently the indicators are negative. Now key indicators 1.40 here, in this chapter, through these points, key indicators, they try to project the kind of economic development that India can have in the next 1 year. But then again, we have to take all this with a pinch of salt, because we know that COVID and post-COVID lockdown will have a significant impact on all these projections. So let us see. First, it is about Nifty consumption index. So they say that the consumption in the country is increasing. However, now we understand that the demand is going to reduce because of lockdown also, and after lockdown also, I believe, because of disruption in the economy, people will not have much of disposable income at their hand, and because of this, even behavioral change in the people may occur, where people may refrain from buying or spending unnecessarily. So the demand constriction, consumption may reduce in the economy. Second, the secondary market continues to be upbeat. Secondary market is stock exchanges. Again, as we have said, the stock exchanges have suffered after the lockdown, and they will improve definitely, but it will take time. Next, third, foreign investors continue to show confidence in India. Now, if you look at the way India has handled the COVID scenario, pandemic, vis-a-vis Europe or America, it is very clear that we have been very responsible. Now look at the difference. We always thought that life in India is very cheap and US takes care of citizens better. But here, when there was stress because of this pandemic, the leadership of the two countries, you can clearly differentiate. America is more concerned about economics than human life, and India is more concerned about human life than economics. So that is the character of a nation that is being reflected in this stress. So I believe in due times, even people are appreciating the way India has handled the pandemic. And if we are able to control this pandemic, uh, I am very confident that the businesses will look towards India very favorably, because we have human capital, we have education, we have able to shield ourselves from this pandemic. And the only competitor was China, and here we know that anti-China sentiment is going to consolidate, strengthen in the times to come. So because of this, foreign investors continue to show confidence. This confidence, I believe, will increase in times to come. So it's a good sign. Fourth indicator is, it shows that repo rate build up demand pressure. So this is technical, just don't get into that. Terms of trade for farmers have been improving. I believe that this is an opportunity for government to invest and modernize the agricultural sector, which they should do. Sixth, industrial activity is on rebound, signs of pickup. Uh, because of COVID and lockdown, it is going to be affected. But again, every adversity comes with an opportunity. Manufacturing sector, which was neglected in India right since independence, we could focus on it and really work to improve the agro processing. We can start with agro processing first. So if we are able to modernize this sector also, it will create sustainable jobs in the Indian economy. Then in sixth point, these 8 core industries are mentioned. Even UPC prelims, you can get a question on this 8 core industries. So prepare that nicely. Seventh, PMI manufacturing has registered a steady improvement. This is good again, but then in post-COVID, it will see a setback and come back again. Then growth in merchandise exports. So we have already discussed that exports are presently, everything is in a standstill, but exports may see a decline as of now. But then in due course of time, if we are able to cash on the opportunity that is available, then exports may increase. Forex reserves, we pride ourselves on having one of the largest forex reserves, right? But the problem is our forex reserves are not like China. Chinese forex reserves were because of the surplus they have earned from their current account. So they own their forex reserve. Our forex reserves are a result of investment that we get in terms of FDI and FII, which is auto money. That is why this forex reserves of India are like a liability. We have to give it back, though they help us pay the import bill. But these are like, they can go away, they can go back, and that is what has happened when this lockdown began or this pandemic began. The forex reserves of India have contracted significantly in the last 1 or 2 months. So we need to work on our exports so that we earn rather than only getting forex reserves as dollars. And you must be aware that even these dollars we get as FII or FDI, these dollars have to be held by RBI in forex reserves, and that also entails significant cost to the RBI. Next, the gross GST revenue collection. It has been subdued, and after this post-COVID, again, this will decline or contract. And I believe this is again an opportunity for government to bring reforms in GST, because GST was supposed to have one nation, one tax, uncomplicated, simple structure. But because of the multiple slabs that we have, because of many goods that have been exempted, and because of the way it has been implemented, the whole process has become complex enough to discourage people to go for GST filing, or even uh, find loopholes to not pay GST to the government. So I think this lockdown gives an opportunity for government to revamp the entire architecture of GST, structure of GST, and come back again with a simplified version of it. Page number 20. Here, very nicely, figure 23 mentions the virtuous cycle of growth. So this was a concept given by the last economic survey, previous economic survey. It clearly says that in an economy, if the demand has to be revived, the first duty is of government, that government should invest into productive sector, and this public investment into infrastructure and productive sectors will boost consumption and then economic growth. So this virtuous cycle is important present also after the post COVID. But then in the past 1 year, what have we observed? The exact opposite of this. Public investment into infrastructure and productive sectors of economy has been declining, and because of that, this virtuous cycle becomes a vicious circle. Because if there is less investment, there is less expansion, there are less jobs, there is less disposable income in the hands of people, there is less disposable in the income in the hands of people, so there is less demand in the economy, and then again the cycle begins. So it's all negative, and that is what we were suffering from. So now after lockdown, again this virtuous cycle may turn into a vicious cycle, and then it becomes the job of government, even as advocated by John Maynard Keynes, that government has to take the responsibility of investing into the economy so that to boost this virtuous cycle, as mentioned here. Next, page number 21, you can see decline in fixed investment rate. So if you see investment into economy, there are three major players who invest into economy. One is government, second is the corporates or companies, private sector, and third is household investment. Now, how is household investment? How, for example, if I own an household, my investment into economy in terms of the loans that I take, the property that I buy. So, for example, real estate investment. So, or the products that I consume and buy, like automobiles. So, all this is my investment into economy. Corporate investment is simple: new plants, expansion, new products. Government investment can be productive, unproductive. So, in infrastructure, for example, national highways and all. So it has been seen that the recent slowdown in the past 1 year majorly has seen a contraction in household investment. Now, if you look at this information, the conclusion is very clear. The picture is that people have negative expectations. That is why, see, as a household, why would I not invest? Why would I not buy products? Why would I not invest into property? The reason is I believe that the economy is not growing. I may not have the job that I have presently, or my income may not sustain in future. That is the only reason if I am pessimistic today. So that pessimism has to be broken, right? This animal spirits, the way Adam Smith said, in the economy has to increase, and for that it is the duty of government to manage the sentiments of people by investing into productive infrastructure. Next, page number 22. Uh, Figures 27, you can see fixed investment by institutional sector. The investments have been coming down. Next, drag of financial sector on private corporate investment. Here, the term that you need to understand is crowding out of private investment. If government's fiscal deficit increases, government borrows a lot of from private sector, that is financial institutions and all. And so the credit availability for the private sector and other stakeholders in the economy contracts. So, corporate investment, all it is mentioned 1.46. Even here, the last lines, they speak about the NPAs. This is the result. Now, for example, I'll just try to give you a context. During 2006 to 2008, Indian economy was growing very nicely. So at that time, the expectations were positive. Everyone was optimistic that double digit growth will be seen after a few years. So the banks gave loans without due checking of the credit worthiness of the borrowers. Because of this, what happened is extra loans were given, over enthusiasm was shown, and then after the 2008 crisis, the loans that were taken could not be repaid back. So the slack after 2008 also affected the banking sector. And in any economy, The economic growth can be sustained only if there is a strong bank or banking sector to back that economic growth. And because of this NPAs, our Indian banks became weak, they became risk averse, and developed a negative pessimistic sentiment. Because of this, the Indian economy has seen subdued growth in last couple of years. So what happened in 2008? We are suffering the negative impacts of it since a couple of years now. So page number 23, relation between credit expansion and investment, that is the relation that I explained now. Next, post this NPA issue, you have to prepare nicely. Then it speaks about decline in household investment. That is also I have explained very clearly now. Next, 1.52, page number 24. It speaks about the role of unincorporated household enterprises. So small businesses. These small businesses work in two ways. One, they make or develop products or services that are directly consumed in the economy as final goods and services, or they supply to the large corporates. So they are part of supply chain, right? Economic supply chain. So now in COVID, this post-COVID scenario, you know that small businesses will face a lot of pressure. Many of them may close down. So that also may affect the investment and growth of economy in future. Next, page number 25, housing unsold inventory. Now this is one example that if you take any city, say for example Pune, there is huge demand for houses, but then houses are available, but they are unaffordable. So whatever there is a gap between the demand for housing sector, demand for new dwellings, and affordable housing availability. So whatever is available is luxurious segment. So this gap is clearly seen here. Figure 30, housing unsold inventory sales and price index. So you can see here uh, the unsold inventory is rising consistently. Next, page number 26, private consumption. It speaks about again the household. So if household is not investing, right, we've seen that households are not investing into economy. So if they're not investing, what are they doing with that? You know, as Indians, what we do, we put it into physical assets. So for example gold, or we use it for consumption. If we are not able to save it, this means it is going for consumption expenditure only. So here, outlook, if you see completely, this is divided into two parts by this economic survey: downside risk and upside risk. Now when you speak about this downside risk, these are the risks which are again pre-COVID. Some of them may become obsolete, some of them may be relevant even after the lockdown. But the most important downside risk that is not given here is the lockdown and this pandemic. So that is the first thing that you need to consider. Second is global trade tensions. Now after the lockdown is lifted everywhere and the world crawls back, the anti-China sentiment will rise and global trade tensions may increase because of rising protectionism. Next, escalation of geopolitical tensions between US and Iran. Again, because of this strain in economics, it may see rise in tensions between various countries and geopolitical tensions. However, I believe that after the lockdown and slowdown in the economy, no country will have the guts to go for military misadventurism, right? So there may not be a war, but tensions may rise between various countries, and that may affect the growth of economy. Next, growth in advanced countries has weakened with very low inflation. Now, the conventional monetary policy has a limit. What is happening even in US, Japan, and European countries now? To bring their economies back, they will go for quantitative easing. So, they will reduce the interest rates by the central bank to the extent that their rates may be close to zero or less than one. In this case, the major problem is liquidity trap. What happens is when the interest rates are reduced, they expect the credit uptake by private players and consumers, and then they expect that the demand in the economy will increase. However, if there is a negative sentiment, even if the interest rates are very low, people may borrow, but people don't spend. So if that happens, what will happen? You will have exhausted all the measures that you have to boost liquidity in the economy. So it will be a very complex situation, catch 22 situation, where there will be liquidity in the economy, but the demand doesn't rise. So this is liquidity trap, right, which is negative. Next, it also says that if the interest rates rise in due course of time in the advanced economies, it may pull the dollars away from the emerging and developing countries like India, which we have been experiencing in the past. Next, page number 28, it speaks about IBC. You prepare this insolvency and bankruptcy code, it's very important. Next is investment in the public sector may increase the national infrastructure pipeline. Note this point very nicely, because I believe that prelims and mains, both or either of them, may have a question on national infrastructure pipeline. Go through that. Fixed investment rate, then non-rising gross domestic. They speak about the current account deficit. So presently it is in control because gold has import have reduced, crude prices have gone down. So because of this, and there is slowing of growth in the country. So overall, the current account deficit of India may be favorable. But then you have to understand that in long term, our aim should be what? Not just reduction of imports. Rather, we should go for imports of raw materials and intermediate goods, and we should focus on improving our exports of processed uh, goods and services. Next, upside risk, it says that manufacturing activity in global trade are bottom. So overall, what can be the upside risk? That, as I said, anti-China sentiment, businesses moving to India, foreign investors looking at India with confidence, and a lot of investment coming into India. So that can be a good that can come out of this pandemic. Second, affordable housing. So government should invest into affordable housing. It should also incentivize the private sector to create dwellings that are affordable to people, to bridge the gap between what is available and what is demanded. Next, global sentiment continues to favor India. That is what I was speaking. Next is Make in India. So here, Volume 1 Economic Survey clearly mentions that apart from Make in India, we need to focus on assemble in India for the world. So not just Make in India, we should also become assembly. That is what China did with mobiles, right? So this assemble in India for the world will allow India to participate in the global value chains which are operated by multinational corporations, especially say electronic. That the term that is used is new products or network products. That is the term that is used by Economic Survey Volume 1. So India should invest into assembly of network goods or network products. Next, ease of doing business. No doubt about it, India has been performing very well since 2014 on ease of doing business, but there are certain things that we need to improve, like getting electricity connection or land reforms. So all these areas where India is not doing well on ease of doing business, we should focus on those sectors, reform them, and so that the ease of doing business becomes more favorable. And lastly, labor laws. I believe that after the COVID, we will have a lot of unemployment and casualization. So I believe that at this time, we should go for labor reforms uh, completely. And that is the only way we can attract foreign investors and generate employment for masses which have been left unemployed after the lockdown. Next, reduction in the base corporate tax. This is also a positive signal that India has given very recently. From 30% corporate tax, India has reduced corporate tax and given an option to corporates to go for this scheme where they can get low corporate tax like 22%, but they'll not get any exemptions. So this is very good. This brings the corporate taxation level in India at par with Southeast Asian countries like and ASEAN economies. So this is a very calculated step taken by India to attract the corporates or the companies which are leaving China to project India as a attractive destination vis-a-vis ASEAN economies. Lastly, merger of public sector banks is spoken about. We know that government is focusing on DSIBs, domestically systemically important banks, the banks which are considered too big to fail. Why? Because in volume 1 of economic survey, it has been clearly mentioned that any economy can grow only if it is backed by a strong banking sector. In India, we do not have such a banking sector. It's very weak. And of all the banks in India, only one bank, SBI, is in top 100. That too, it is 55th ranked. Also, when government says domestically, systemically important banks, there are only three: SBI, ICICI, and HDFC. So we need to go for merger, banking consolidation to ensure that the banks become big in India, right? So this is about the state of the economy, chapter one. Uh, just annex certain reforms are mentioned. I'll just highlight the important parts. Page number 32. You need to prepare the insolvency and bankruptcy code, then national infrastructure pipeline, then taxation laws amendment ordinance 2019, which I spoke about, the corporate taxation change. So that is mentioned here. Important term is minimum alternate tax, MAT. You have to prepare for exam. Then Make in India and Assemble in India, as I mentioned. Next, public sector banks. One point I would like to highlight that here it's the survey says that 70,000 crore rupees were invested, decided by this budget to invest into public sector banks. Now, from where does this money come? This is taxpayers' money. This money could have been very well invested into education, health, and infrastructure. But then this is going in public sector banks to take care of the NPA problem. So, if public sector banks continue their behavior like this, inefficiency, then we as taxpayers are also losing, the economy is losing, and overall the country is also losing. Next, uh, important here is The Financial Benchmarks India Private Limited, page number 33. Then auto sector government, the changes that government has brought in or steps that government has taken to boost the automobile sector, that is given here. Go through that. MSME is another keyword. You have to prepare about this sector very nicely. I would rather tell you to go on internet and search on MSME. Next, exchange traded funds. These are also very important. What are exchange traded funds? These are like mutual funds, right? But they are more flexible and they are cost effective than mutual funds. The context here is that government is trying to disinvest the uh, central PSUs by creating funds like Bharat 22 ETF. So here what they do is they pool the government investment or government stakeholding in all these PSUs, and then those selected for disinvestment, all these government stake is brought together in a ETF, and this ETF can be brought or sold by consumers in the stock exchange. So it is like a mutual fund ETF, right? So you prepare the exchange traded funds, Bharat ETF, the Bharat bond ETF is mentioned here. Then Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the schemes you have to prepare. Then the changes brought by government in FDI, you need to prepare them nicely. One term that is again important is angel tax, that you need to prepare nicely. Uh, Even the issue of MSP, questions may be asked on that. So PM Kisan and related terms. Next, change GST, I would say whatever the recent changes were brought and what measures are needed, reforms are needed, you prepare that nicely. Uh, about export sector, special economic zone amendment bill 2019 is important. Prepare that for the examination. This is all from my side about chapter 1. We'll be coming up with further sessions. You can see a small button there, subscribe. So subscribe to this channel, so whenever I upload the next session, you will get to know and you can watch it in the same time. Stay healthy, stay safe, and focus on your studies. Thank you.